Jake Martinez pressed his face against the transport window as Kepler Station came into view. The massive structure floated in space like a giant wheel, its metal surface gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. He had never seen anything so big or so beautiful in his 24 years of life. "First time off Earth?" asked the woman sitting next to him. She had short brown hair and kind eyes behind her glasses. "Second time," Jake replied. "I spent 2 years on New Terra helping my uncle with his farm." "I'm Jake, by the way. Lisa Thompson," she said, shaking his hand. "I study alien animals." "What about you?" "I grow food." "Well, I'm learning to grow food that aliens can eat too." Lisa smiled. "That's important work. The galaxy needs people who understand how to feed everyone." The transport docked with a soft bump. Jake grabbed his single bag and followed Lisa through the airlock. The station's main hall was enormous, with a ceiling so high he could barely see it. Hundreds of beings moved through the space, but most of them were not human. Jake stared at a group of tall, thin creatures with crystal-like skin that sparkled when they moved. Near them stood beings that looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Their compound eyes turned to watch him as he passed. "Don't stare," Lisa whispered. "It's considered rude by most species." "Right," Jake said, but he could not help looking around in wonder. A voice spoke from speakers hidden in the walls. "All new students report to Assembly Hall 7 for orientation." They followed the crowd through wide corridors lined with windows showing space outside. Jake noticed that humans made up only a small part of the group. Most of the other students seemed to know each other already. Assembly Hall 7 was a large room with seats arranged in a circle. Jake and Lisa found empty seats next to each other. As they sat down, a tall, cat-like being walked to the center of the room. Its fur was golden brown with dark stripes, and its eyes were bright green. It wore simple robes that marked it as a teacher. "Welcome to the Academy of Species Integration," the being said in perfect English, though its voice had a slight growling sound. "I am Professor Veltar. You are here because your species has shown promise for joining the Galactic Confederation." Jake looked around the room. He counted about 50 students from at least 8 different species. The crystal beings sat together on one side while the insect creatures clustered near the back. "The next 6 months will test your ability to work with other species," Professor Veltar continued. "You will learn about different cultures, different ways of thinking, and different ways of living. Most importantly, you will learn if your species can truly be part of something larger than itself." A student raised one of its 4 arms. It was one of the insect beings with bright blue coloring on its shell. "Professor, what happens if we fail these tests?" Professor Veltar's tail twitched. "Your species will be given more time to develop before trying again. The Confederation has waited thousands of years to reach its current size. We can wait longer if needed." After the professor finished speaking, students were divided into groups and given room assignments. Jake was surprised to find himself sharing a living space with 3 other beings. Lisa, one of the crystal creatures, and one of the insect beings. Their rooms were connected to a common area with a kitchen and sitting space. The crystal being introduced itself as Harmony of Light, though it said humans could call it Harmony. The insect being was called Click Whistle Song, but it suggested they use song instead. "I have never met humans before," Song said, its voice making small clicking sounds between words. "Your species is very new to space travel." "We're still learning," Lisa said diplomatically. "Your people have an unusual reputation," Harmony added. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Other species say humans are unpredictable." Jake wondered what that meant, but before he could ask, an announcement came over the speakers. All students were to report to the dining hall for their first meal together. The dining hall was even larger than the assembly room. Long tables were arranged throughout the space, and students were encouraged to sit with different species. Jake found himself at a table with beings he had never seen before. The food was strange but not unpleasant. Jake watched as his table companions ate in various ways. Some absorbed nutrients through their skin, while others seemed to filter food through complex mouthparts. "What do humans eat in the wild?" asked a creature that looked like a walking plant. Its voice came from somewhere in its trunk. "We eat many different things," Jake said. "Plants, meat, fruits, vegetables. We're what scientists call omnivores." Several beings at the table made sounds of interest or concern. "You consume other living creatures?" asked a small furry being with large eyes. "Some humans do, some don't," Lisa said quickly. We learned to eat many different foods because we had to survive in many different environments on our planet. How fascinating, said the plant creature. Most species specialize in one type of nutrition. Your adaptability must have helped you develop space travel quickly. As they talked, Jake noticed that teachers moved through the room, watching and listening to conversations. Professor Veltar stopped at their table for a moment, his green eyes studying Jake and Lisa carefully. How are you finding your first day? The professor asked. Everyone has been very kind, Lisa said. We're learning a lot. Good, Professor Veltar said. Learning about each other is the most important part of your time here. After dinner, Jake and Lisa walked back to their shared living space. The station's corridors were quieter now, with most students settling in for the night. Did you notice how the teachers kept watching us? Jake asked. I noticed, Lisa said. I think they're more interested in humans than they're letting on. Is that good or bad? I'm not sure yet. In their common room, Song was cleaning its antenna while Harmony sat perfectly still, its crystal body glowing softly in the dim light. Do humans require darkness to rest? Song asked. Usually, Jake said. Do you mind if we turn the lights down? Not at all. We are all learning to accommodate each other. As Jake settled into his sleeping area, he thought about the day. Everything was new and strange, but also exciting. He had dreamed of traveling to the stars since he was a child, and now he was living in a space station with beings from across the galaxy. But something about Professor Veltar's attention bothered him. The way the professor had looked at him and Lisa suggested there was more to their presence here than just education. Outside his window, stars stretched in all directions, and Jake fell asleep wondering what the next day would bring. 3 weeks had passed since Jake and Lisa arrived at the academy. They had settled into a routine of classes, meals, and study sessions with their alien roommates. Jake was learning about soil chemistry for different planets, while Lisa studied the behavior of creatures from dozens of worlds. The morning started like any other. Jake woke to the soft chiming sound that served as the station's alarm system. Song was already awake, cleaning its compound eyes with careful movements. Harmony stood near the window, its crystal body catching the light from the distant suns. Good morning, Jake said, stretching as he got out of bed. The instructors have announced a special session today, Song said. Its antenna twitching with what Jake had learned meant excitement. All students must attend Lecture Hall Prime at midday. Did they say what it's about? Lisa asked, emerging from her sleeping area. Only that it is a behavioral assessment, Harmony replied. I have heard older students speak of such tests, but they never provide details. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. Over the past weeks, they had noticed that the academy seemed more interested in testing students than teaching them. Every class included some form of evaluation, and teachers constantly watched their reactions to different situations. At breakfast, the dining hall buzzed with nervous energy. Students from all species clustered together, whispering about the mysterious assessment. Jake noticed that the teachers seemed more alert than usual, their eyes scanning the room constantly. I don't like this, said a small, furry creature that usually sat at their table. My older sister attended this academy 5 years ago. She said some tests were difficult. How difficult? Lisa asked. She would not say, only that not all students completed them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had assumed the academy was like the agricultural college he had attended on Earth, but clearly things worked differently here. When midday arrived, all students gathered in Lecture Hall Prime. It was the largest room Jake had seen on the station, with high ceilings and thick walls. He noticed that the normal chairs had been removed. Instead, the room was empty except for some strange equipment along the walls. Dr. Nixara, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, stood at the front of the room. Jake had seen her before, but never in class. Lisa had mentioned that she was the head of something called behavioral sciences. Students, Dr. Nixara began, her voice echoing in the large space. Today you will participate in Environmental Challenge Protocol 7. This assessment will measure your natural responses to unexpected situations. Jake looked around the room. Many students seemed confused, but some of the older ones looked worried. Professor Veltar stood near one wall, his tail twitching in what Jake had learned was a sign of tension. You will encounter various forms of life during this assessment, Dr. Nixara continued. Remember that your safety is ensured by the monitoring systems. React naturally. Do not overthink your responses. What kind of life forms? Called out one of the crystal beings. You will see shortly, was all Dr. Nixara said. The doctor moved to a control panel on the wall. Jake noticed that barriers had been placed around the room's exits, and the equipment along the walls included what looked like cameras and other recording devices. Begin assessment, Dr. Nixara announced. At first, nothing happened. Students stood in the middle of the large room, looking around nervously. Then Jake heard a soft sound from the far end of the hall. A door he hadn't noticed before slid open. From the darkness beyond came a small four-legged creature with gray fur and bright eyes. It was about the size of a small dog with a long tail and pointed ears. Jake's heart jumped, but not from fear. The creature looked almost exactly like a wolf pup he had helped raise on his uncle's farm. The other students didn't share his reaction. The insect beings immediately moved away from the newcomer, their antennae flat against their heads in fear. The crystal beings clustered together, their surfaces dimming. Even the cat-like student seemed nervous. The little wolf pup looked around the room, clearly confused by all the strange beings. It made a small whining sound and took a few hesitant steps forward. "Oh, poor thing," Lisa whispered beside Jake. "It's scared." Before Jake could respond, another door opened. This time a different creature emerged. It was sleek and black, about the size of a house cat, but with longer limbs and silver eyes that seemed to glow. Jake didn't recognize this species, but its movements reminded him of the wildcats that sometimes wandered onto his family's property. A third door opened, and Jake's eyes widened. The creature that emerged was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was about the size of a large chicken, but it had leathery wings folded against its back and scales that shifted color as it moved. Small horns sprouted from its head and smoke drifted from its nostrils. The room erupted in chaos. Students scattered in all directions, pressing themselves against the walls or trying to climb the barriers blocking the exits. The insect beings made high-pitched clicking sounds of distress. Several of the smaller species had fainted, but Jake found himself moving toward the creatures instead of away from them. The wolf pup saw him approaching and wagged its tail uncertainly. Jake knelt down slowly, the way his grandfather had taught him when approaching nervous animals. "Hey there, little one," he said softly. "It's okay. No one's going to hurt you." The pup took a careful step forward, then another. Soon it was close enough for Jake to extend his hand. The pup sniffed his fingers, then licked them with a warm, wet tongue. Lisa was having similar success with the black cat-like creature. She made soft clicking sounds with her tongue, and the animal's ears perked up with interest. It approached her cautiously, then rubbed against her leg with a purring sound. The dragon-like creature was the most nervous of the three. It had backed into a corner when the other students panicked, and small flames flickered around its nostrils. But Jake noticed it was watching him and Lisa with curious eyes. "Come on," Jake whispered to Lisa. "Let's see if we can help the little dragon too." They approached slowly, with the wolf pup trotting beside Jake and the cat creature following Lisa. When they were a few feet away, Jake sat down on the floor. Lisa did the same. "Hey there, little fire breather," Jake said gently. "We're not going to hurt you either." The dragon tilted its head, studying them. Slowly, the flames around its nostrils died down. It took one careful step forward, then another. Jake remained perfectly still as the dragon approached. When it was close enough, it sniffed his hand with a warm, wet nose. Then, to Jake's amazement, it settled down next to him with a contented sigh. The room had gone completely quiet. Jake looked up to see every other student staring at him and Lisa in shock. The wolf pup had curled up at his feet, the cat creature was purring in Lisa's lap, and the small dragon was napping against his side. Dr. Nixara stood frozen at her control panel, all four of her arms suspended in mid-motion. Professor Veltar's mouth hung open, showing his sharp teeth. "Assessment complete," Dr. Nixara finally managed to say, her voice barely audible. The creatures were gently collected by Academy staff using special equipment, though they seemed reluctant to leave Jake and Lisa. As the other students filed out of the room, many of them gave the two humans a wide berth. "How did you do that?" Song asked when they returned to their shared quarters. "Those were predators. They could have killed you." "They were just babies," Jake said. "Scared babies. They needed someone to be kind to them." "But they were dangerous," Harmony insisted. "Even young predators are programmed to hunt and kill." "Maybe," Lisa said, but they're also programmed to seek comfort when they're afraid. And right now they were definitely afraid. Jake thought about the little wolf pup's warm tongue and the dragon's contented sigh. They hadn't seemed dangerous to him. They had seemed like the baby animals he had grown up with on the farm. But judging by everyone else's reaction, Jake was beginning to realize that his relationship with animals might be more unusual than he had ever imagined. The academy felt different after the assessment. Jake noticed it first in the way other students looked at him and Lisa. Some stared with open curiosity, while others seemed afraid to get too close. Even their roommates Song and Harmony acted more carefully around them. "Did we do something wrong?" Jake asked Lisa as they walked to their morning classes. The corridors seemed quieter than usual, and several students turned to watch them pass. "I don't think so," Lisa replied, but she sounded uncertain. "We just reacted naturally." Maybe naturally for humans is different from naturally for everyone else. Dr. Nixara was waiting for them outside their classroom. Her silver skin seemed to shimmer with nervous energy, and her forearms moved constantly as she spoke. "Jake Martinez and Lisa Thompson," she said formally, "please come with me. Your morning classes have been canceled." They followed her through parts of the station Jake had never seen before. The corridors here were narrower, and instead of windows showing space, the walls were lined with doors marked with symbols he couldn't read. "Where are we going?" Lisa asked. "To discuss your performance in yesterday's assessment," Dr. Nixara replied without looking back. She led them to a small room with comfortable chairs and a large screen on one wall. Professor Veltar was already there, along with two other beings Jake didn't recognize. One looked like a taller version of Song, with darker coloring and more complex patterns on its shell. The other appeared to be made of flowing water held in a transparent container. "Please sit," Dr. Nixara said, gesturing to two chairs facing the others. Jake and Lisa sat down, exchanging worried glances. This felt more like an interrogation than a discussion. "What you did yesterday has never happened before," Professor Veltar began. "In 200 years of conducting Environmental Challenge Protocol 7, no test subjects have ever shown the behavior you displayed." "What behavior?" Jake asked. "We just tried to help some scared animals." The water being made a sound like rain on leaves. They were not animals. They were juvenile apex predators from 3 different worlds. Each one is capable of killing beings twice your size even at their current age. "But they were babies," Lisa protested. "They were frightened and confused." "Yes," said the tall insect being. "That is what makes your reaction so unusual. When predators are frightened, they become more dangerous, not less. Every species in the galaxy knows this." Dr. Nixara activated the screen on the wall. It showed footage from the assessment, but not from the angle Jake remembered. This view was from above, showing the entire room. "Watch," she said. On the screen, Jake could see the 3 creatures enter the room, but from this angle, he could also see their body language more clearly. The wolf pup's ears were back, its tail tucked between its legs. The cat creature's fur was standing up, and it moved with the careful steps of something ready to run or fight. The dragon's wings were partially spread, and small flames flickered around its mouth and claws. All 3 were in defensive mode, Professor Veltar explained. In this state, they would normally attack anything that approached them. The screen showed Jake and Lisa moving toward the creatures while everyone else fled. But there was something else Jake noticed. As he and Lisa got closer, the animals' body language began to change. Their defensive postures relaxed. The wolf pup's tail started to wag. The cat creature's fur settled down. The dragon's flames disappeared. "How did you know they would not attack you?" the water being asked. "We didn't know," Jake said honestly. "But they looked scared, not angry. When animals are scared, they usually just want someone to make them feel safe." "But these are predators," the insect being insisted. "They do not seek safety from other species. They provide safety by eliminating threats." Lisa shook her head. "That's not how it works with young animals. Baby predators are just as vulnerable as any other babies. They need protection and comfort until they're old enough to protect themselves." The adults in the room exchanged looks that Jake couldn't interpret. "Tell us about your relationship with predators on Earth," Dr. Nixara said. For the next hour, Jake and Lisa found themselves answering questions about pets, farms, zoos, and wildlife conservation. They explained how humans had domesticated wolves into dogs, how cats had chosen to live with humans, and how people work to protect dangerous animals like bears and large cats. The interrogators seemed particularly interested in the concept of pets. "You keep predators in your homes?" Professor Veltar asked, his tail twitching rapidly. "Some people do," Jake said. "My family has always had dogs. They're part of the family. And these dogs never attack you. Why would they? We feed them, take care of them when they're sick, and love them. They love us back." "Love," repeated the water being. "You form emotional bonds with predators." "Of course," Lisa said. "Don't other species do that?" "No," Dr. Nixara said simply. "Other species either avoid predators or dominate them through fear and violence. What you describe is unknown in galactic civilization." Jake was beginning to understand why everyone seemed so shocked by their behavior. "Is that why you're asking us all these questions? Because we're different?" "You are more than different," Professor Veltar said quietly. "You are unprecedented, and that makes you either a great opportunity or a great threat." The questions continued for several more hours. They wanted to know about human history, about how people had spread across Earth, about hunting and farming and the relationship between humans and other species. When they were finally allowed to leave, Jake felt exhausted. They walked back to their quarters in silence, both lost in thought. Song and Harmony were waiting for them in the common room. Both seemed agitated. "We have heard rumors," Song said without preamble. "Other students are saying that humans can control predators with their minds." "That's not true," Jake said quickly. "We don't have any special powers." "Then how do you explain what happened?" Harmony asked. "The footage is being shown to students from other classes. Everyone is talking about it." Lisa sat down heavily in one of the chairs. "We just understand animals, that's all. Humans have lived with animals for thousands of years. We learned to read their body language and understand their needs, but why would you want to?" Song asked. "Predators are dangerous. They exist to hunt and kill other species." "That's not all they exist for," Jake said. "They also exist to raise their young, to play, to explore, to form relationships with others. They're not just killing machines." Song's antenna drooped. "This is very confusing. On my world, we avoid predators completely. The idea of approaching one voluntarily is unthinkable. What happens next?" Harmony asked. "Will you be allowed to continue your studies?" Jake didn't know how to answer that question. Based on the morning's interrogation, he wasn't sure if he and Lisa were students anymore, or if they had become something else entirely. That evening, as he lay in his sleeping area, Jake stared out the window at the stars. He had come to the academy hoping to learn about growing food for different species. Instead, he seemed to have revealed something about humanity that nobody else in the galaxy had expected. He thought about the wolf pup's trusting eyes and the dragon's contented sigh. To him, their behavior had seemed perfectly natural, but apparently to the rest of the galaxy it was impossible. Jake wondered what that meant for Earth and for humanity's future among the stars. If other species feared their ability to connect with predators, would humans ever truly be welcome in galactic civilization? Or was there something else going on here that he didn't understand yet? Jake woke to find Dr. Nixara waiting in their common room. It had been a week since the interrogation, and he had hoped things might return to normal. But the doctor's presence at such an early hour suggested otherwise. "Jake Martinez and Lisa Thompson," she said as they emerged from their sleeping areas. "You have been selected for the Advanced Xenobiology Practicum. Please gather your personal items, Imar." "What about our regular classes?" Lisa asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Those have been suspended for you. This practicum will provide more appropriate learning opportunities." Song and Harmony watched nervously as Jake and Lisa packed their few belongings. Neither of their roommates had been selected for any special programs. "Will we see you again?" Song asked, its antenna drooping with what Jake had learned meant sadness. "I hope so," Jake replied, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Dr. Nixara led them to a different section of the station entirely. Here the corridors were wider, and the walls were made of a different material that seemed to absorb sound. Jake noticed more security cameras and several doors marked with warning symbols. "Where exactly are we going?" Lisa asked. "To the Advanced Research Division," Dr. Nixara replied. "You will be working with our most experienced xenobiologists to study interspecies interactions." They arrived at a complex of rooms surrounding a large central area. Through reinforced windows, Jake could see what looked like different environments: a rocky desert, A dense forest, a shallow ocean, and several others he couldn't identify. "Welcome to the Habitat Laboratory," Dr. Nixara said. "Here we study how different species interact in controlled environments. Your first assignment will be to observe and document the behavior of various fauna." She led them to a preparation room where two other researchers waited. One was another insect being similar to song but larger and with more complex markings. The other looked like a walking tree with bark-like skin and leaves growing from its arms. "These are Dr. Clickstall and Dr. Branching Sky," Dr. Nixara said. "They will supervise your practical exercises." Dr. Clickstall stepped forward, its compound eyes reflecting the light. "Your task today is simple. Enter Habitat 7 and document the behavior of its primary inhabitant. Record your observations and note any changes in the creature's activity patterns." "What kind of creature?" Jake asked. "You will see," Dr. Branching Sky said, its voice like wind through leaves. "Trust your instincts." They were given recording equipment and protective gear, though Jake noticed the gear seemed more like standard work clothes than serious protection. This worried him more than if they had been given heavy armor. Habitat 7 turned out to be a recreation of a mountain forest. Tall trees created a thick canopy overhead, and the air smelled of pine and earth. A small stream ran through the middle of the space, and Jake could hear birds singing somewhere in the canopy. "It's beautiful," Lisa said, adjusting her recording device. "It reminds me of the forests back home." They had been walking for about 10 minutes when Jake heard a different sound. It was low and rhythmic, like heavy breathing. He held up his hand to signal Lisa to stop. Through the trees ahead, Jake could see a large, dark shape moving slowly through the undergrowth. As it came closer, he realized it was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest bear he had ever seen. Its fur was dark brown, almost black, and its claws were as long as Jake's fingers. "Oh my," Lisa whispered. "That's definitely a predator." The creature hadn't noticed them yet. It was focused on something near the stream, occasionally making deep huffing sounds. Jake watched its body language carefully. Its ears were relaxed, not pinned back or alert. Its movements were slow and deliberate, not tense or aggressive. "It's not hunting," Jake said quietly. "Look at how it's moving. It's just exploring. How can you tell? Watch its ears and tail. When predators are hunting, their whole body becomes focused and tense. This one is just wandering around." As if to prove his point, the creature stopped to sniff at a fallen log, then batted playfully at something with one massive paw. "Should we try to get closer?" Lisa asked. Jake studied the animal for another minute. "I think so. But slowly, and we make sure it knows we're here. We don't want to surprise it." They approached carefully, making just enough noise to alert the creature to their presence. When it noticed them, it sat back on its haunches and tilted its head curiously. "Hello there," Jake said in a calm, steady voice. "We're just visiting." The creature made a sound like a very large dog snuffling. It didn't seem afraid or aggressive, just interested. Jake sat down on the ground about 20 feet away from it. Lisa joined him, keeping her recording device running. For the next hour, they simply observed. The creature went about its business, drinking from the stream, investigating interesting smells, and occasionally glancing over at them with what Jake could only describe as mild curiosity. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "It's completely ignoring us as a threat." "Because we're not acting like a threat," Jake replied. "We're sitting still, keeping our distance, and not making any aggressive moves." Eventually, the creature ambled over to them. Jake remained perfectly still as it sniffed at his shoes, then his hands. Its nose was warm and wet, and its breath smelled like the forest. "Easy there, big guy," Jake murmured. "We're friends." The creature made a pleased rumbling sound and settled down next to them. Within minutes, it was napping in the afternoon sunlight filtering through the trees. When they finally returned to the preparation room, Dr. Clickstall and Dr. Branching Sky were waiting with expressions Jake couldn't read. "How long were you in the habitat?" Dr. Clickstall asked. "About 3 hours," Lisa replied. "And you encountered the Rigelian bear?" "Is that what it was?" Jake asked. "It seemed friendly enough." Dr. Branching Sky's leaves rustled in what might have been surprise. "Friendly? A Rigelian bear is one of the most dangerous predators in known space. They have killed experienced researchers who approach them incorrectly." "It didn't seem dangerous to us," Jake said. "It was just curious." The two doctors exchanged looks with Dr. Nixara, who had been watching through the habitat windows. "Tomorrow you will work with a different species," Dr. Clickstall announced. Please rest well tonight. Over the following days, Jake and Lisa found themselves working with an increasingly diverse array of predators. There were pack hunters that looked like wolves but moved with impossible grace. There were solitary cats the size of small cars that could leap incredible distances. There was even something that looked like a dragon, though much larger than the baby they had met in the first assessment. Each time the pattern was the same. The researchers would send them into a habitat expecting them to observe from a safe distance. Instead, Jake and Lisa would end up sitting with the creatures, sometimes even petting them or playing simple games. "I don't understand what's happening," Lisa said one evening as they sat in their new quarters. "These are supposed to be dangerous animals, but they all seem to like us." "Maybe they can tell we're not afraid of them," Jake suggested. "Animals are good at reading emotions. But why aren't we afraid? Everyone else is terrified of these creatures." Jake thought about this. "Remember when we were kids and adults would warn us about dangerous animals? But if you actually met a bear or a wolf in the wild, your first instinct wasn't to run screaming. It was to be still and quiet and hope it would leave you alone." "That's true, and most of the time that's exactly what they want too. Maybe that's the difference. Other species see predators as things that exist only to kill. But we see them as animals that have their own lives and interests, and killing is just one small part of what they do." What Jake didn't know was that every session was being recorded and analyzed by teams of researchers throughout the galaxy. His casual interactions with deadly predators were being studied by xenobiologists, military strategists, and government officials from dozens of worlds, and in secret communications transmitted across space. A growing number of voices were asking the same question. If humans could befriend any predator they encountered, what did that mean for the safety of every other species in the galaxy? Jake was reviewing his notes on their latest habitat session when his tablet chimed with an incoming message. The screen showed what looked like an official Academy document, but when he opened it, he found himself looking at something he definitely wasn't supposed to see. The header read, "Confidential Assessment Report, Human Threat Evaluation Protocol." His hands shook as he read through the document. Words jumped out at him: potential weaponization, ecosystem disruption capability, recommend immediate containment, and possible quarantine of Earth colonies. "Lisa," he called quietly. "You need to see this." She came over and read over his shoulder, her face growing pale as she took in the contents. "They think we're dangerous," she whispered. "They think we could use predators as weapons." The document outlined months of testing designed not to evaluate humans for Academy admission, but to determine if humanity posed a threat to galactic civilization. Every interaction Jake and Lisa had with the predators had been carefully analyzed for signs of dominance or control behavior. "We're not students," Jake realized. "We're test subjects." A soft chime at their door interrupted them. Dr. Nixara entered without waiting for permission, followed by Professor Veltar and several other Academy officials Jake didn't recognize. "I see you have accessed classified materials," Dr. Nixara said, noticing the tablet in Jake's hands. "That was not supposed to be possible. Is it true?" Lisa demanded. "Are we prisoners here?" Professor Veltar stepped forward, his tail twitching nervously. "You are guests, but yes, your presence here is not entirely voluntary." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means," said a new voice from the doorway, "that the Galactic Confederation is trying to decide whether humanity should be allowed to exist." The speaker was an elderly human woman Jake had never seen before. She wore simple clothes but carried herself with an authority that made the alien officials step back respectfully. "I am Ambassador Patricia North," she said. "I represent Earth in the Confederation Council. Earth knows we're here?" Lisa asked. "Earth has been tracking this situation very carefully," the ambassador replied. "We suspected the Academy invitation was not what it appeared to be." Dr. Nixara's forearms moved in agitation. "Ambassador, this facility is not open to diplomatic interference. This facility is holding Earth citizens under false pretenses," Ambassador North replied coolly. "I think that qualifies as a diplomatic matter." Professor Veltar cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should explain the situation fully." Over the next hour, Jake and Lisa learned the truth about their time at the Academy. The Confederation had been concerned about humanity's rapid expansion into space and their unusual interactions with dangerous fauna. When Earth applied for full membership, Several species had insisted on a comprehensive evaluation of human behavioral patterns. The concern, Professor Veltar explained, is that humans could destabilize entire ecosystems. If you can form alliances with apex predators, you could theoretically take control of any planet's food chain. But we don't want to control anything, Jake protested. We just don't see animals as our enemies. That is precisely what worries them, Ambassador North said. Most species achieve dominance through fear and aggression. The idea of achieving it through cooperation is foreign to them. Dr. Nixara activated a wall screen showing footage from their various habitat sessions. Observe your interactions with the creatures. In every case, they defer to you. They become calm in your presence. From a military perspective, this looks like a form of command and control. Jake watched himself sitting with the massive Rigelian bear, then petting one of the wolf-like pack hunters. He could see how it might look to someone who didn't understand the relationship. What if we could prove it's not about control? Lisa asked suddenly. How would you do that? Professor Veltar asked. Show us a problem that can't be solved by controlling predators. Show us animals that are causing trouble, and let us try to help in a way that benefits everyone. Ambassador North smiled. That's an interesting proposal. Dr. Nixara looked skeptical. What kind of demonstration did you have in mind? Take us to a real problem, Jake said. Not a controlled habitat, but somewhere animals are actually causing difficulty for people. Let us show you how humans really work with dangerous creatures. 3 days later, Jake and Lisa found themselves on a transport ship heading to Kepler Station's industrial sector. The area was mostly automated, but several facilities required maintenance crews to work in, environments where local fauna had become problematic. Their destination was a waste processing plant where something called metal mites had taken up residence. The creatures were about the size of rats but had an appetite for refined metals. They had been damaging equipment and making the facility dangerous for maintenance workers. Attempts to eliminate them have failed, explained the plant supervisor, a crystalline being whose surface was dulled with stress. They are too fast and too numerous. The facility may need to be abandoned. Jake and Lisa studied the situation. The metal mites were clearly intelligent, building complex tunnel systems and working together to strip valuable metals from the plant's infrastructure. But they were also obviously stressed, their movements frantic and their social behavior disrupted. They're not supposed to be here, Lisa observed. This isn't their natural habitat. Something drove them here. Investigation revealed that a nearby asteroid mining operation had destroyed the mites' original home. They had fled to the only place with accessible metals, the processing plant. They're not pests, Jake realized. They're refugees. Working with the plant supervisor and the mining company, they developed a solution. The mites were excellent at separating different types of metals, a process that usually required expensive equipment. In exchange for processed metals delivered in a controlled manner, the mites were given access to metal-rich asteroids where they could establish new colonies. Within a week, the pest problem had become a beneficial partnership. The demonstration had been observed by representatives from across the Confederation. When Jake and Lisa returned to the academy, they found the atmosphere had changed completely. Your approach to the metal mite situation has been noted by the Council, Ambassador North informed them. Several worlds have similar problems they would like your assistance with. Professor Veltar approached them with something Jake had never seen before, a respectful expression. Owe you an apology, the professor said. We assumed that your ability to communicate with predators was a threat. We did not consider that it might be a gift. Dr. Nixara was less readily convinced, but even she seemed thoughtful. Your species continues to surprise us. The Council has decided to create a new position within the Confederation, Ecosystem Mediator. What would that involve? Lisa asked. Helping worlds solve conflicts between different species, managing dangerous fauna, finding ways for intelligent beings to coexist with the creatures that share their planets. Jake thought about all the animals he had met during his time at the academy. Each one had its own personality, its own needs, its own role in the larger web of life. We'd like to try, he said. 6 months later, Jake stood in a new kind of classroom. This one had viewing windows that looked out onto habitat spaces where young beings from dozens of species learned to interact safely with various forms of life. The Academy's first class of multi-species animal handlers was small but enthusiastic. Song had volunteered immediately, as had several other former classmates. Even Harmony had joined, discovering an unexpected talent for communicating with crystalline life forms. Today we're going to meet some new friends, Jake told his students. Remember, the goal isn't to control them or to make them afraid of you. The goal is to understand what they need and find ways to live together peacefully. The door to the habitat opened, and 3 familiar shapes bounded into the room. The wolf pup, the shadow cat, and the small dragon from his first assessment. They were older now, but they still remembered him. The wolf pup ran straight to Jake and jumped up to lick his face. The shadow cat wound around Lisa's legs, purring loudly. The little dragon settled at Jake's feet with a contented sigh that sent small puffs of warm air across the floor. "How do they know you?" asked one of the new students, a young Cathera whose fur was still fluffy with youth. "We're friends," Jake said simply. "And friendship, it turns out, is something that works the same way all across the galaxy." As his students began their first careful interactions with the 3 creatures, Jake looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there were worlds where different species needed help learning to live together. There were ecosystems in trouble and conflicts that needed peaceful solutions. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake felt like he truly understood his purpose among the stars. Humans weren't meant to conquer the galaxy or control its creatures. They were meant to help everyone find ways to coexist. And judging by the happy sounds coming from his classroom, they were going to be very good at it.